Welcome back, everybody, to the Badgerland Birding Podcast, bringing you birding news and stories from the Badger State and beyond. Today, we're with Josh Dewitt, who is a birder out of Manitoba, who does some guiding out there and has a lot of cool stories from the region. So, how are we doing, Josh?
Doing pretty good. How about you guys?
Doing well. For those that can watch the video version, we were commenting how much we like your background. It's very scenic, as I'm sure much of Canada is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I guess for those of you, I've already told you guys, but for people who are watching it, you see this. I took this picture a little while ago. This is Eastern Manitoba, and yeah, a lot of our province looks like this. So yeah.
So, how'd you get into nature and birds? Like, when did it all start for you?
Oh, you know, I was one of those kids that had a ice cream pail. I was out in the backyard collecting bugs and frogs and stuff. I guess you could say I catching frogs. I probably started herping. um, but birds, I started to notice them more as I started to get around, I guess, the age of 10. So I kind of have been birding to some degree since I was about 10. I'd visit my grandfather pretty regularly, and he wasn't he wasn't like a hardcore birder, but we quite often talk about like he'd say like, oh, I had the goldfinches show up today and they were on the feeder, or the ravens hanging around, and we just kind of chat about that. And then for my 10th birthday, he gave me my first field guide. And yeah, from there I just started, birding all the time. And I guess I really, really started getting into it when we had the Manitoba Breeding Bird Atlas. I guess that would have been about 10 years ago. And I started to get really connected with the birding community here, with like, the local ornithologists, and started to learn a lot from them. Um, and yeah, from there, I just started to kind of establish myself a little bit more in the birding community and go out as often as I could. And yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I got my start.
Yeah, how old are you now, Josh?
32.
Okay.
So I actually have a ton of questions for you, but I think before that, we need to start with a Canadian stereotype check. So we hear the accent, so that's a check. How do you feel about hockey?
I'm not much of a hockey person. Uh,
Whoa,
That's
whoa,
a
wait,
big
yeah,
non-check.
wait a
I'm not
Uncheck
minute.
much of
that.
a sports person in general. Um, my dad is really into hockey.
You're wearing a
But
flannel. That's another check.
it kind of leaning into the stereotype a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then he does seem very nice so far, from what we understand, which is another Canadian stereotype, apparently, is that everyone up there is very
Yeah.
nice. Is that true?
Yeah.
Are most of the people
Great.
up there very friendly?
Yeah, I'd say that we are. Maybe not so much to each other.
Oh,
Um, but I always have people say that to me because I meet people from all over the world fairly regularly, and they always say like, oh yeah, you guys are so friendly. But you know, I ended up going for a while to East Coast, Nova Scotia, and it surprised me how friendly people are out there. And I thought, Manitoba, we're pretty friendly people, but East Coast, yeah, they're just like you're walking down the street and someone will come up to you and talk to you like they've known you your entire life. We're not really like that in Manitoba, but I'd say to people who are visiting, we're very friendly to visitors.
that's funny because our East Coast people are mean and our Midwest people are nice. So it's kind of the reverse of Canada, apparently.
I think it's probably because, uh, you know, maybe it has something to do with all the lobster they eat. Um, I think it's just a cultural thing there. Just like, it's a small area. It's kind of like very much small town vibes. Everybody knows each other. Um,
I think here
but
we get a little overstimulated in some of the bigger cities in the US. Like the East Coast, you
yeah,
got New York, New Jersey. I think there's just so much going
yeah,
on that the tension is high. So I think a
our
lot of
East
people are just under that tension all the time.
our East Coast doesn't really have those big cities. You know, if you want to start seeing big cities in Canada, you got to start going west to like Toronto and Montreal and that area. East Coast Canada, it's like a lot of little towns. I mean, even the capitals like Halifax and St. John's and stuff like they're not super big. Um, Actually, I think they might be smaller than Winnipeg, and Winnipeg's not a very big. I think we're under 1 million people, so pretty small.
So going back to
Yeah,
the Canadian thing, I've seen things online of you guys putting out maple syrup on snow and then like rolling it up. Is that a thing
yeah,
people do?
yeah, happy. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, um, yeah, it's not something we do all the time. You need really. Oh, sorry, the dogs are play fighting. Yeah, that's kind of like a late winter as the sap starts flowing. You need I'd say you need like wetter snow, and yeah, it's pretty.
What do you do? Just put maple syrup on it and then roll it
Yeah,
up?
yeah. You have a like a table made out of snow, flat snow. Pour some maple syrup on it. Put a popsicle stick in that, and roll it up, and it hardens up pretty quickly when it's cold. Yeah,
We need to
That's
try this.
yeah, we definitely need to try that.
We're basically like Canada South, like we could be a province.
yeah. Really, yeah. You could be.
What is the view of the US up in Canada? You guys like us? You guys not like us? What's going on there?
Um, I think it's kind of a mixed view. A lot of us like, northern states. Yeah, it is a very similar to Canada. Um, I guess there's a lot of people who don't like Americans. Um, so there's a bit of a little bit of prejudice there.
It's funny because
Um,
I feel like I don't really think about Canada much. I'm just like they're up there
Whoa,
doing. I'm
wow,
like
yeah,
geez.
I'm like they're up there doing something. They're rolling taffy in the
That's why
snow.
people
Like they're
don't like
having
us from
fun.
there because you're just like, I
I'm
don't
just
even think about
I
them.
don't think about it. I figure they're doing well. They're doing
Wow.
fine. They're living their life. I don't think that's that controversial.
I don't know, man.
How often, right? How
So
often do you think about Canada?
me?
Yeah.
Daily. Probably like
No, you
16,
don't.
16, 17 times a day. It's always right in the back of my mind, actually.
You're like, how are they doing today? I hope they're having fun.
Well, actually, I will say after already talking for a little bit, because we were chatting before we actually started recording, and there was some stuff we're going to get to that I'm very intrigued about Canada now. So I'll probably be thinking about it more than I did before. But I do want to know, kind of on that note, what is the birding community like in Canada? Because there is so much more space there. People are more spread out. Is it very tight knit, or is it kind of just like everyone for themselves? What is the vibe up there for birds?
I'd say it really depends on where you are, but I'd say for here, in Winnipeg, very tight knit. We all know each other. Um, I can't speak for other parts of the country, but that's definitely what it's like here. Um, I would suspect a lot of the prairie provinces and the East Coast, their birding communities are probably the same. But yeah, for Manitoba, yeah, we all know each other. We all go out fairly regularly with each other. So yeah, pretty tight knit group.
Is it pretty popular up there as a hobby, or is it kind of still fringe niche?
Yeah, it's popular. I guess there was a bit of a die off for a bit there, like Manitoba at least. Pretty big thing 20, 30 years ago. Um, but it's starting to grow now. We got the younger generation coming in. Yeah, a lot of COVID birders. So and a lot of like young people, teenagers and stuff, yeah, coming into the birding community here. So yeah, it's steadily growing.
That's good. What are some of the top species people want to see up there?
Ooh,
And when we
top
say up
species.
there, I feel like we'll just be mostly talking about the Manitoba area because I don't know about you,
Yeah,
Derek, but whenever I'm like Canada, I assume it's just one big thing and everyone just knows all parts of it, but it is quite vast.
yeah. Second biggest country in the world. Yeah.
I did not know
Um,
that actually. That is interesting.
yeah.
Is a
Just
lot of
just
it
behind Russia.
is a lot of it
It's about
uninhabited
two
though up
times.
north though?
Yeah. Yeah. Most Canadians live within 100 kilometers of the US border.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, yeah. And Manitoba, especially, there's a lot of places where it's not really habitable. You can't really build communities there. Um, but yeah, for bird species, um, owls definitely, that's a big one. If people are coming to southern Manitoba in the winter, really good place to see owls. Great gray owl, that's our provincial bird. Really good place to see it. A lot of people go up north to the Churchill area, get a lot of those Arctic species. It's kind of at the southern part of their range, birding on the tundra there and along the coast. So you get seabirds. You have stuff like Jaegers, all the scoters are there. Long-tailed ducks breed there. Red-throated and Pacific loons, usually pretty good place. And we have a colony of little gulls up there as well.
Hmm.
Um, Back in the 80s, 90s, it was apparently a really good place to see Ross's gull. It was a pretty reliable place for them. Not so much anymore. I think the last one was seen in Manitoba in 2008. But southern Manitoba, we also have really good marshy areas, which I think a lot of people come here for that too. You can drive up and you can see just hundreds of white pelicans and all of the prairie ducks. The typical prairie ducks are down there. Grebes, yeah, it's um, and we get a lot of boreal species too, like a lot of Manitoba's boreal forest. So we get stuff like spur grouse, Canada jay, um, boreal chickadee, fairly easy to find here, and yeah, a lot of people come up for that too.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
hard is it to find boreal owl up there?
Give us the gist on the
You know,
boreal owl situation.
I have yet to see one in Manitoba, but they are seen every year. Um, I've actually only heard one in Alberta once in the mountains, but I've never had any experience with one in Manitoba. But they are here. But they're one of those species that they are. Everybody's kind of hush hush about it.
Yeah,
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, I think that's kind of a common thing throughout their range. I think eBird reports and stuff are kind of hidden because yeah, there's some people who don't treat the animals ethically. So that's
Unfortunately, that's the
unfortunate.
same here as in Canada, I feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It is sometimes a problem here. Um, and boreal owl is one of those species that people they can get like right up to it. They're not a bird that's very easily flushed. So I think that's part of the reasoning with that. But we see that a lot with like snowies and gray grays here. People don't really treat them with the respect that they deserve. Um, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but I guess that's kind of a problem across a range of these birds.
Yeah, unfortunately. What's some of the highlights in the spring? Do you guys
Oh, in the
have a good
spring,
migratory push?
yes, we
He looks
do. Yeah,
excited. It looks like his eyes lit up when you mentioned spring.
yeah, yeah. Migration here, oh, it is amazing. Yeah, I don't even know where to start with that. We have so many different bird species here. Yeah, we have about the dogs here, the neighbors. Um, yeah, we just huge like amounts of warblers and flycatchers and just like everything you can think of, shorebirds, all of those ducks. Yeah, just you know, you can go out and you can see like over 100 species in a day if you're like cruising around. Yeah, you can get some pretty good days out here. Especially, like late May, early June. That seems to be when everything's pushing through. So yeah, spring birding. Yeah, it's amazing here. Definitely would recommend coming up for that.
Very cool. And before we started, we talked about, is it Point Pelee? That's how people say it.
Yeah, I think it's Point Pelee in Ontario. Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the
yeah,
ones that we hear about. People
yeah,
going to see a lot of stuff out there.
What's weird
yeah.
about it is it's so far south that it's really more south than a lot of the states in the US though, because it's kind
Yeah,
of just like to the east of Michigan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've never been there myself, but yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff about it. It's a really good place to go birding, and yeah, I get a lot of rarities there fairly regularly. So yeah, I'd say yeah, it sounds like a pretty good spot.
So I want to go back to talking about the Churchill area because you said something that really was intriguing to me, and it's that is the polar bear capital of, did you say
Yeah,
the world or of Canada?
yes, the world.
Because that to me sounds very interesting, but it also sounds extremely dangerous. Do you have to be really careful when you're up there because of that polar bear population?
Yeah. So most of the like the season when most people are up there for birding, which is usually around June, mid-June, the polar bears are usually still out on the sea ice. So, you might get a couple bears here and there. Um, so you definitely have to be alert. If you are with a group, usually there's someone with a gun. Um, uh, yeah, everybody in Churchill apparently has a gun.
Yeah,
um,
that's probably a good
they
idea.
have, yeah, they have. So the thing is with Churchill is so it's like a point coming out into Hudson Bay, and a lot of the polar bears gather in that area from across Hudson Bay because the Churchill River's flowing out there, and freshwater freezes faster than saltwater. So they're going to congregate there, and then they're going to use that as a point to go out onto the sea ice. So around this time of year, October and into November, lots of bears. There is kind of like a bear patrol that goes around the town. And yeah, it's kind of, from what I understand, you go outside the town, it's a little bit sketchy.
Oh, wow.
The town looks
Yeah,
small. Like I'm seeing an airport
yeah,
here, not much else.
yeah. Less than 1,000 people there, I believe.
Wow.
Not a very big town.
The Polar Inn and Suites,
Yeah,
Iceberg Inn. Oh wow, a lot of ice
They're really
themed
taking
things.
advantage of
Polar
that
bear
ice and snow
bed
theme.
and breakfast.
Now, I do know that polar bears are one of the animal species that actually hunts humans. So it's
yeah.
not just a random attack if people get attacked by polar bears. They are hunting humans for food.
Opportunistic. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. And then, also you got to factor into that we also have the other two North American bear species up there as well. So, yeah, kind of just got to be careful wherever you go, I guess.
So, Josh, and taking a look at this map here, so most of Canada is like down here, close to the US.
Yeah,
And then as you go further north, there's just like there's probably not many people in none of it, right?
no,
Okay. So
um,
this is mostly uninhabited then.
most of it, yeah, yeah. Honestly, you go probably about like halfway up, like the prairie provinces in BC there, and there's it's mainly just small towns. There's not much going up there. Usually towns built around a specific industry. Like in Manitoba, we do a lot of hydro here, and there's farming and logging and stuff in other provinces, and a lot of the communities are based around that kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
it's pretty much within 100 kilometers of the border.
And then what else can you see in Churchill, like bird wise? Do you mention beluga whales out there as
Yeah.
well?
I like
That's
how you're
really
like, what can
cool.
you see bird-wise? Beluga whales.
Well, I know we talked about it earlier, and that I feel like that'd be a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, beluga whales, they're coming into the river there in the spring when the ice breaks up. They swim into the Churchill River. Um, and them and the seals and a lot of the water birds are feeding on capelin, which is a little fish. They come into shore in huge schools, and yeah, a lot of the birds and other wildlife are feeding on that.
What is the
Um,
fish called?
capelin, yeah,
Hmm,
they're a little
interesting.
fish in the smelt family. Yeah, quite common on the here on the East Coast as well. But yeah, a lot of the animals are feeding on that. Um, bird wise, yeah, if you're by the water, there's all the typical sea ducks that you kind of think of are like northern birds. So the scoters, long-tailed duck, and then also common eider. Uh, the It's called wet tundra, so it's kind of like a marshy kind of tundra. It has a lot of the other duck species, but then a lot of the shore birds that we usually see on migration, they breed up there. So we got stuff like Hudsonian godwit, whimbrel, the various little sandpipers, little peeps up there, Jaegers. I believe all three species have been seen up there. Long-tailed Jaeger is now fairly regular up there. Used to breed a little bit further up north, but they've been kind of coming down to the Churchill area, so they're seen every year. Parasitic Jaeger is pretty reliable up there. And then yeah, you have like a lot of the other, you know, typically more taiga, northern boreal forest birds like blackpoll warbler. Um, what else? Redpolls, pine grosbeak. Yeah, they're all breeding up there too. Willow ptarmigan.
That's
It's
the one I was
pretty,
going to ask about most was the ptarmigan
yeah,
because we don't,
yeah,
especially in the Midwest, really get ptarmigans ever for the most part. So that's a really
yeah.
interesting species.
Unless it's like like one of those really rare southward um, flights, I guess. Yeah, and we don't really get them down here either. Like I think it's happened in the past, but yeah, up there, pretty easy to see from what I
Ooh.
understand. Yeah, yeah, and I think they have willow and rock ptarmigan
Ooh,
up there.
wow. Being in
Yeah,
an area that can get so wild with like, I'm assuming there's moose out there as well with kind of dangerous things.
yeah.
Have you ever had any dangerous run-ins with wildlife or I guess people?
Um, I've definitely had some sketchy situations with people. Um, I will get into that in a second, but wildlife, yeah, I've had moose, yes. This wasn't a birding trip, but I'm never not birding.
Everything's a birding
um,
Exactly.
trip. Yeah.
I was fishing with my brother, and we were up. This was about I'd say so in Canada. I don't know if it's the same there, but we basically measure how far away something is by how long it takes you to drive there. So this is about a 3 hour drive from Winnipeg. Um, Came around a corner, and we had a boat trailer on the back of the truck, and there was a mother moose standing in the middle of the road, and we kind of stopped, and she wasn't moving. She had her ears back, and when a moose does that, you kind of have to watch it. You kind of have to give it a little bit of space because they're pretty unpredictable animals. Um, and yeah, we were just kind of like wondering, like, what is she doing? Like, is she gonna come and attack the truck? She was actually just waiting for her calf that came out of the bush. Just it must have been like honestly couple weeks old, tiny little calf, and they slipped into the bush, and they get just within the trees, and you don't see them anymore. You won't hear them. They're honestly, in my opinion, scarier than bears. Um,
I've heard people
but
say that
I mean,
before that they're actually the most dangerous animal up in
yeah,
Canada.
oh, for sure, yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I've had encounters with bears too. Actually, I just had one last year I was leading a group of about 20 people, and we had a black bear. And I was looking at, I think, at some warblers up in the top of a tree, and I'm walking down a dirt road, and I had my binoculars up, and I looked down, and just across the ditch from me was a black bear. Um, and I had a group of 20, maybe over 20 people behind me, and this bear was not scared. It
Wow.
kind of just sat there, and we were just kind of like, making a little bit of noise, and it just turned around, walked into the bush, and sat there for as long as it took us to walk past. And yeah, it was an interesting situation. I see a fair amount of black bears, but I've never really had an encounter like that. Most of the time, they see you and they run in the other direction. But
Yeah.
this was a little, yeah. With people, yeah, I do owl and nightjar surveys, and yeah, it's usually people are questioning like why you're parked in front of their house, um, and they'll roll up. Most people are pretty good with it. They'll just kind of like ask like what's going on. You get some people that are a little bit aggressive. So I've had situations like that where it's a little bit sketchy. Um, but yeah, for the most part, people are pretty good. Yeah. And of course, I take pictures too. You're in front of someone's house, and you're taking pictures of a bird in their front tree. They're gonna come out and ask, like, "Hey, why are you taking pictures of my house?"
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's always that awkward conversation, like, "Oh no, I'm taking pictures of this bird here." Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah, the outside of a house is always tough. You gotta be careful where you're pointing that lens, especially if you have a pretty big camera lens.
Just doing some
yeah.
recon work for like a private investigator or something is what you'll look like.
I don't think you're doing very good recon work if you're just parked outside the house, just
You are
like
because you're camouflaged as a birder. So then when they're like,
uh-huh.
"Are you trying to catch me cheating?" You go, "No, no, you had a very thrush in your front yard." And there's your cover.
Well, you do wonder sometimes you get these big reactions to like little things. You're like, oh, you're like, what are these people hiding? That they're, why are you outside? Like, what are you
Yeah,
doing?
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
bird
had a
bird
couple.
responsibly, scope responsibly, photograph
Yeah.
responsibly. Have you ever had any paranormal encounters out there? Sasquatches,
Um,
aliens?
I've had some weird encounters, but I always just kind of chalk it up to some sort of animal.
Is there one that really
um,
sticks out to you?
yeah, there was one, and this is another occasion where I wasn't really like specifically on a birding trip, but I was in the mountains in Alberta, and I was with a team of people, and we were kind of yeah, I don't know how to explain the area that we were at, but if you go into some parts of the Rockies in Alberta, there are these big. I know, yeah, I know. You want to be part of the podcast too. um, yeah, you get to these valleys that are big.
What kind of dog do you have, Josh?
The, this she is a. This is
Aw.
actually my brother's.
Oh,
She's a mixture between Rottweiler, Akita, and Springer Spaniel. So
Oh.
she's adorable.
yeah, she's very opinionated about everything. So.
Based on the conversations we had, part of me thought you were just gonna pick up a wolf. Be like, this is our dog. It's just like a wild wolf.
I thought it sounded kind of like a turkey.
um yeah, where was I? Yeah, I was in Alberta. And I was with a team of 12 people, and we were kind of camped out in this area where we had it was a big valley filled with just like these low willow bushes, like maybe I'd say 4 or 5 feet tall. And the thing about these areas is they are, especially at that time of year, it was like late September. It's a place that moose and grizzly bears like to hang out. So we had the stream kind of going behind our camp. And a fair distance away, we had our kind of like food preparation area. And if you're backcountry, you gotta follow all of the precautions to make sure that you're not like enticing wildlife to come in. So food preparation, we washed everything. We had our food preparation area far away from our camp. This area, it had all of these big cottonwood trees, and it was, I think, used most years as kind of like a horse camp, that people would used to go hunting, for moose, elk, mule deer, that kind of stuff. And they would process the animals there, hang them up on the trees. So all of the trees have these big, metal sheets around the bottom, so the bears can't climb up it. So this was early in the morning. Something was banging around in the camp, and all of our pots and pans, all of that stuff was tied up in a tree so that the bears couldn't get to it. So there was something like touching the metal, touching the table, kind of like moving around in there, and it walked in between the tents across the stream and into the valley. I didn't actually hear it. One of the people in our group heard it, and our guide said, "Oh, it was just a moose." Um, I don't know if it was, because I didn't see any moose tracks or anything anywhere, nothing in the stream. Like it was weird. So I think either it was a bear, or maybe it was Bigfoot. I don't know.
I thought you were
But
gonna
it
say
was it
it
was
sounded like it was on two legs when it crossed the stream.
yeah, it whatever it was big.
Do
But
do
yeah,
people believe in Sasquatches up there?
yeah, there are a lot of it. It's not as much of a thing out here. Like there are a few people who claim to have seen it out in Manitoba, but it's definitely more of a, especially in BC, southern BC, Vancouver Island, that area. It's a big thing. It's a part of their culture. That's kind of where the whole, like where the word Sasquatch came from.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a big thing there. Yeah, it's you see all kinds of stuff with Bigfoot imagery on it. Um, Manitoba, not so much. I do know of a couple reports. Not actually, some of them are not too far from the city either. But yeah, definitely not as big a thing as BC and Alberta.
Interesting. Have you done a lot of birding outside of Canada?
Um, yeah, I've done a fair amount. I I went to, so my partner's from Brazil, and she lives in the northeast part. So I've done a fair amount of birding there. Northeast Brazil, very, very interesting area, a lot of unique species.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah, it's uh, it's kind of an overlooked area when people are thinking about birding in Brazil, or even just like wildlife watching in general in Brazil. Northeast Brazil is kind of overlooked. Um, it's kind of like a interesting, um, transition from the coast. It's kind of like mangrove forest, coastal rainforest, mixed in with like sugarcane, and then you get up to the mountains, and it gets like arid, and that's a kind of a habitat that's called, Caatinga. So it's kind of like a scrub forest type habitat. Honestly, very similar, I'd say, to kind of stuff that you'd maybe see in, like southern Arizona.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's very similar habitat. Um, and I did some birding when I was in Mexico. It was more of a family trip. So we're kind of just like south of Cancun. So I've done some birding there. Um, I haven't really been to the States too much actually the past like 20 years. So I haven't done too much birding in the States. I would like to. Um, Most of the time when I've been to the States, it was kind of just like driving through to get to Ontario. So um, back in the day, that was kind of the better route to take. If you want to get to Southern Ontario, you drive through the States. And then I briefly went to Washington when I was in high school. But other than that, yeah, not too many places outside of Canada. I've been all across Canada, but outside of the country, yeah, not a whole lot of birding. So
Interesting.
it'd be something that I'd like to really work on. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you're treating us like flyover country. Like, yeah, I went to Mexico, I went to Brazil, just
Had to
skipping the
pass
whole
through the
US.
stupid United States, get back to Ontario.
Yeah, put a little respect on our name, Josh.
Although you did say you never think of Canada, so I mean, maybe just getting you back for that.
It's the same thing.
We've
Yeah.
we've
Never
been
think of the
through
state.
Canada only once, and it was to go to the Detroit Lions Green Bay Packers game in Detroit. So we went like up and
That was
around.
before you even needed a passport to get to Canada too. So I
No,
remember the big
I thought you did.
No, no, I don't think so. They changed that after that. That was in 2003, I believe. I
They
don't
were mad
remember when
because we
that
didn't
happened.
have
Yeah.
our birth certificates, though.
Were they? I
Yeah,
don't
I
remember that.
there
thought
was
so. Yeah, there was a thing.
you only needed like some form of like government ID of some kind.
They thought
Yeah.
we were trying to be illegal aliens in Canada.
I don't know. From what I remember, people were pretty nice though. Like we had a good time going
Canada's like, we
through.
have to close our southern border.
But we haven't been back since, so
Yeah. Yeah, we
Now
do
I
it's
get a
on the
want to though,
list.
lot
talking
Yeah.
about it.
um a lot of Americans come to Manitoba at least for the fishing.
Hmm.
Yes.
Because that's a big thing here. Um but yeah, I don't know, like I've met a fair amount of I don't know, every once in a while I'll see a license plate like, oh, like, you know, there's an Illinois license plate, or I saw a Florida license plate and I was kind of confused. The other day I saw an Arizona. I'm like,
Ooh.
you know, usually our people are going down to those places. I don't know why you'd want to come up here.
The Florida
But
person's like, I'm going as far away from the hurricane as possible. I
Yeah.
just
yeah,
went north and I never stopped. If you could visit one place in the US, like we'll say lower 48, so we'll take out Alaska and Hawaii, where would you want to go besides Wisconsin?
you know, um, I'd like to go to Arizona.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, South Florida is kind of like high on my list too. Just yeah, like some of those species that they have in the Keys and the Everglades there. I'd like to see that. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like Arizona has kind of been one lately that I've been like, oh, I want to go there. Like, and you know, even just for uh, birds, and then you also got like reptiles and stuff there too. And I really like herps. So it'd be kind of a an interesting trip that I'd like to do in the future. But yeah, I think those are kind of the top two on my bucket list, at least for the
Those are good
states.
choices.
Yeah, South
Yeah,
Texas is another good one. Um,
yeah.
yeah, there's so many cool places to go in the US. You could spend a whole lifetime just exploring,
Oh,
everything
for
that's here.
sure. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
what about out of North America? Any bucket list destinations like Costa Rica,
New
Australia,
Zealand. New Zealand
Europe?
would be a good one.
The neotropics in general. I love the neotropics. Just the diversity, and you know, you get a lot of the stuff. Like even if you're not going to other parts of Canada and the States, to find specific birds, you know, you might see them in migration in like Central America, or in their winter grounds, Central and South America. The you know, the Caribbean islands. A lot of unique birds there. Seems like each island has its own species. So, you know, I would like to go to somewhere like Cuba or Jamaica or something like that, just to see the bird life that they have there because they have, yeah, a lot of unique stuff. And of course, you know, I always like going to Brazil. It's great place to go, buddy. Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. It's hard to pin down a good like couple countries because I want to go everywhere.
Yeah, I feel that. What's something you feel like people misunderstand about Canada? Like, what's a misconception that we have about you guys?
Oh, there's a lot.
Oh, uh-oh.
The top one, it's always cold here. It gets pretty hot here in the summer.
Hmm?
Um, at least in Manitoba, I'd say. And we're kind of weird because we have like it's not particularly warm now. Monday, when I was out, yeah, it was like 20 degrees Celsius. Off the top of my head,
Uh-oh.
I don't
The Celsius.
know that. Yeah, yeah, we're Celsius people. Um, but now it's like I think it went down to like -3 last night, so it's kind of a weird like we have just like crazy swings sometimes. Um, in the summer, plus 30, 35 is pretty like a pretty regular temperature. Yeah, usually somewhere 25 to 35. That's kind of about how hot it is. It's
Oh,
very
yeah.
humid here in summer
See, I
too.
think this is why people actually have that misconception is because I think that people hate Celsius so much here that when you're like
Yeah,
25 to 30, you're like, it tops out 25 to 30. People are like, oh, wow, they're barely above freezing.
yeah, yeah. That's on that would not surprise me if that's the case.
So that's like 77 to 86 Fahrenheit
Yeah,
for
yeah,
our American audience.
We go camping in northern Minnesota too, in the Boundary Waters, which for all intents and purposes is kind of Canada. And there
yeah,
are some wild temperature swings. You know, you'll be super cold at night, and then by the time it's the middle of the day, you'll be sweating. So it definitely has wild swings even in the southern part of Canada. So can only imagine what is experienced as you get a little farther north.
yeah, yeah. And then we get that in the summer, but then in the winter, Winnipeg definitely one of the coldest places in Canada.
Really?
It does get cold here. Um, but yeah, we're getting down to I think some winters it's like almost -50. It's usually just like that for like maybe a week or two. Um, last winter was pretty bad though. Like we did have a couple spells like that. So it gets cold here in the winter, and it's like hot and humid in the summer and cold and dry in the winter. So it's yeah,
Don't worry, it's a dry cold.
yeah. Honestly, I would prefer that. I because yeah, they do say the humidity is what kills you, and I don't like the wet cold. Like it gets
Oh,
me.
when you get a damp cold, that just chills you completely.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can't warm up. Yeah, yeah. We don't get too much of that during like you know the dead of winter. It's pretty dry, so it's not super bad. If you're bundled up, then it's not that bad. But it's yeah that first little bit of the winter where it's wet, everything is kind of like melting and refreezing, and then the same thing you get into like March, because March is usually when things start melting and it starts to actually become spring here. Yeah, those two periods, it's not as fun, and then you also
So
factor in the mud and too.
up in Churchill, is there only ice in the winter? Like, does it thaw out? So the time to see polar bears, would that just be the winter? Or are they there in the summer? Is it still icy?
Um, they come back in the late summer. I think usually in June you can find some patches of snow. So they're usually, I'd say, a couple months behind us in terms of, uh, like it's a shorter season up there for summer. Um, you can find polar bears in the summer, but they're usually just hanging out in the rocks or, somewhere out of the wind and sun and just conserving their energy because they don't really eat anything during the summer months.
Hmm.
Their main feeding period is when they're out on the ice. Um, but that ice doesn't usually start breaking up, and the bears don't usually start coming back until about June, July. And then this time of year, October, November, is when they're all starting to gather along the coast there, and then that's usually the best time to see them. But you you could potentially see a bear at any point in the year. But yeah, October, November is usually the best time to see them.
Gotcha. Very cool.
But there's
That place sounds so wild, like the way that I'm picturing it.
yeah,
It's probably even crazier than I have in my head, but just the chance to see polar bear is pretty wild.
there's a reason why it is used so heavily in our tourism advertisements. Yeah, like a lot of that is just a lot of nature related stuff. And Churchill honestly is a huge draw for people coming into Manitoba. Yeah, because we have polar bears, we have belugas, we have the aurora.
Yeah, I was gonna ask
And then
about that. Is the aurora really good a lot of the time?
yeah, it can be. Even down here, there's been some nights where it's just been phenomenal. I mean, I live in the city, so I don't see it as much here. On occasion, I will, but you don't have to go very far outside the city to see it when it is a good season for it.
Yeah, we've actually
Um,
had some down here and even further south of us where you could see a little bit of it. So
yeah,
that's been really neat.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's I unfortunately didn't get to see any. I think it was kind of a little bit like patchy clouds and yeah, I'm in
Mm.
the city. So yeah. But Churchill, it's good place to see it. Yeah, they have a lot of people who come in the winter to see it. But yeah, you can see it, yeah, pretty much any point in the year too. But yeah, I've had some nights where I can specifically remember one when I was a kid. Um I think we didn't. It was so bright we didn't need flashlights to walk back to the cabin. Like it
Wow.
was bright. Um, just that every 11 years is kind of that the pulse because it's I guess solar radiation, right? Um, and that's about how often the sun pulses. So yeah, you can kind of accurately count every 11 years. That's
Hmm.
when the aurora is going to be the best.
Interesting.
I think 11 years. Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome. I feel like you guys have actually a lot of draws for people to visit that area. I had
Oh,
no idea Churchill even existed, so I'm kind of pumped to have that knowledge now, to know you could go
yeah.
to Canada and have the opportunity to see some polar bears and other
Yeah.
kind of Arctic species.
Yeah, I want to go there too. Yeah. Yeah, definitely a cool place to go birding. Like we're just kind of just a mixture of a bunch of different habitats. Like we have the tundra subarctic coast, and then we also have lakes, marshes, boreal, and then prairie, kind of in like the southwest. So get a lot of those prairie species, and in between that, we have like just a mosaic of like aspen parkland, and yeah, it's just a bunch of different habitats within a short distance of the city. So yeah, you don't have to go too far to get a good variety of animals.
Yeah, and you're a photographer too, right, Josh?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, yeah,
So people can check out your stuff on Instagram and stuff.
yeah, yeah. Josh Dewitt one.
Cool. What do you shoot? Like what kind of camera and lens?
Um, it's a Canon T for over 10 years. A Sigma 100 by any means. I kind of do it just for myself, but yeah, it's greatly improved. I think some of the photos that I've gotten just because you can get that much more close with it.
Gotcha. Cut out a little bit. You said Canon T4 Sigma 150 to 600.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Got it. I'm digging the Northern Hawk Owl photo myself.
yeah,
Oh man, yeah. There's just something about those boreal birds it's so special to see them.
yeah. And they're they don't they're not birds that scare off too easily too because they don't really see people very often, right? So you can usually get pretty good looks at them and watch them just kind of go about their business. Yeah. Yeah, the past couple of winters have been good for finches too. So
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us, Josh.
yeah, thanks
Really
for having
appreciate
me.
your time. It's been cool to learn about Canada and see what's going on up there.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to, do tours? I believe you're going to be part of our guiding networks. People can check it out on our website
Yep.
once we get your info up. So you can do that. And then you also lead tours through Eagle Eye, correct?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah. Um Yeah, so if they want to go through them, yeah, they can definitely set that up. I can't guarantee that I'll always be there, because I've only so far done one tour with them. But if you want to get a hold of me, yeah, you can reach out on Instagram or my email, josh.dewitt@live.ca. And yeah, just let me know what you want to see, and yeah, I can see if I can work it out for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. And thanks to everyone for watching this episode and listening to the Badgerland Birding Podcast.